new to unity. What does that mean, the mother principle or the father principle? Well, we're talking about the mystical marriage of the father-mother in all of us, the divine feminine, the divine masculine, the father being that mental nature that has all these one with divine ideas, and then the mother that opens to receive through her feeling nature those divine ideas and births them on the physical plane into form. It's like the mother says, let's put some feelings into these ideas and birth them into form. How does that sound to you? Amen. All right. So there's a reason why they call it Mother Nature, right? Because it's birth, that creative father ideas into physical form. And people often ask that are new to unity, do we believe or do we have any form of the Trinity? And in unity, if you've been here for years, now those of you are going to have to memorize this. This is one of those questions on the quiz, is what is the Trinity in unity? We call it the Metaphysical Trinity of mind, idea, and expression. Mind, idea, and expression. Ideas from divine mind, we receive and bring them down and manifest them into form. And that third, the child, then, is the manifest form of those ideas. So just for future reference, would you repeat with me? Mind, idea, and expression. Together, mind, idea, and expression. Now you know what the Metaphysical Trinity is. Because we're here to know life is not being done to us. That develops a victim consciousness, right? When you feel you have no power or control, it's all being done to you. And we have to remember, Jesus said, don't you know you are gods? Now, he didn't mean I'm a god, come worship me. People misinterpret that. That's not what it meant. But we're all expressions of the one. Attributes, aspects of the one with creative power. Mind, idea, and expression. And you know, I grew up with a book that taught that without my parents even knowing what metaphysics meant or what that creative power meant. How many of you were raised with Harold and the Purple Crayon? Oh, a few of you do. Wasn't that a great book? And Harold is wonderful. He runs around with a purple crayon. You can come up and look at this later. And everything he draws comes into being. He draws the moon, and there it is. He draws a road and starts to walk on it. He draws a building, and it becomes his life. And he draws his life. And so we had that as a child without even truly understanding. So that's what our thoughts and beliefs are doing in our lives. How powerful we are. Now there's an oops that goes with that. Unfortunately, sometimes when we're drawing those things, instead of that perfect expression showing up, our childhood wounds show up. Oops, all together now. Oops, oops. You see, there are 3 levels of consciousness. Another thing on the test. Superconscious, the realm of the higher mind, whether you call it God mind, your higher self, whatever, that higher consciousness. And then there's this consciousness of our awareness right here, right now. We think this room is real. We think we are it. Not realizing there's a higher world right here, right now, with higher thoughts. And then there's the subconscious. That's where the oops come from. The subconscious with buried memories and old wounds, lifetime after lifetime, or if you have enough for one lifetime. And so I always use the example. My higher consciousness has this wonderful idea of a perfect circle. And my conscious self decides I'm going to manifest this circle, and I end up with a crooked oblong. Because those subconscious wounds of my childhood are creating an oblong instead of this perfect circle. Am I popping today? Okay, good. I hear it, so it must be in my own head. I'm creating it, right? So what I call that is the reverse Stuart Smiley. You all know my favorite Stuart Smiley quote. Well, the reverse of that is, I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough, and gosh darn it, people don't like me. Anybody here had the reverse Stuart Smiley going on in your mind? That comes from the wounds, those old wounds, whether from your childhood or your deep, deep past that goes way, way back. And so this week, another Mother's Day, and I asked Michael, I said, he's my go-to and I don't know what else to talk about on Sunday. Oops. And so I asked him, what should I talk about today? And he just came right out with it. He said, heal the child in you to bring out the power of the mother. And I thought, oh, interesting. Quit manifesting those wounds and start manifesting the joyful desires of your heart. But those old subconscious wounds can keep manifesting oblongs instead of circles. Mine started back, and I used to call it sister school. Anybody here go to sister school with me? Am I the only one that went to sister school? Oh my God, I can't be. Well, anyway, we had this teacher, her name was Sister Rogers, and she was really strict, but she was a good teacher. And she had us doing this art project one day. It was sort of a watercolor kind of thing. And at the end, she took everybody's painting and lifted it up and said, who did this? And oh, there were some real beautiful ones. And then mine came up, and it was the ugliest, most god-awful painting I'd ever seen in my life. And I was so shame-filled. And I thought, I'm never going to do art again. And I saw myself as not being able to do art. But then along came another year with Sister Robard, who had a great sense of humor, and she had this great energy. And she asked me if I would cut out a construction paper picture of a pilgrim to put on the bulletin board. And I kept telling her, I don't do art, I can't do it. And she kept on me very gently and lovingly until I finally cut out a little simple construction paper pilgrim for the bulletin board. And you know what? It wasn't half bad. It wasn't half good, but it wasn't half bad. And after that, I began to open up a little bit in my creativity. And it was years later that I realized, well, you know what? Painting is not how I express. I express more through writing or speaking. We each have to find what is your way of expressing. And it doesn't have to be anything profound. It doesn't have to be art. It can be you're the best hugger in the world. It can be your ray of sunshine when you walk in the room, whatever is yours. And people ask, well, what is creativity then? And now I say it's whatever the divine presence wants to do through you today. Whatever it wants to do through you today. It can be anything. But here's where the paradox comes in. Paradox 1 and paradox 2. Paradox 1 is your old wounds often show up instead of your desires. And paradox 2 is it's often the wounds that make us who we are. Now, I don't want to say you have to have wounds to become who you are, but often they make us who we are. And I'm going to give you some examples. When Bob Dylan performed at his high school talent show, classmates booed him off the stage. And then he started laughing all the way to the bank later on, right? Walt Disney went bankrupt, suffered a nervous breakdown, and still made it to the top of the mountain. And you know what mountain I'm talking about, right? Sir Walter Raleigh wrote the history of the world during a 13-year imprisonment. Martin Luther translated the Bible while enduring confinement in the castle of Wartburg. Dante wrote the Divine Comedy while under a sentence of death and during a 20-year exile. And Helen Keller was not able to hear or see during her long life, yet she became a famous author and worldwide celebrity for her charm and her wisdom. Now I want you to insert your own name into those stories. What's your name and what was your wound? And yet look at where you are today. We all ended up in the same place, right? Look at where you ended up today. There's a reason why the biography of Michelangelo was called the Agony and the Ecstasy. The wounds and the joy, dancing together, the wounds and the joy, make us who we are. And so sometimes to release those old wounds, we need what I call a spiritual chiropractic adjustment to open that flow of creativity. Because opening that flow again can determine your quality of life, your energy, your vitality, your joy and your passion. And how do you know when you've got blocks to that creativity? Well, physically, you may feel tired and lethargic. Mentally, your mind may be dull and sluggish. Emotionally, you may lack zeal or passion for life. And spiritually, you may feel that loss of joy, that disconnect with spirit. So ask yourself, are you living from your creativity, your divine nature, or from the old wounds? And know that you have the power. Get out your purple crayon and start drawing what that would look like if you were free of those old wounds. Thomas More once said, the repression of the life force is the most common reason that he sees people in therapy. They've stopped the flow of that spiritual life force. They've stopped the flow of the mother principle. And remember that old advertisement way back when, where the woman gets up and it's Mother Nature and says, it's not nice to fool with Mother Nature. It's not good for you to stop that creative flow. It'll hurt you. The cultures all over the world talk about this in so many different ways. And I know you've heard the shamanic version. When a shaman sees someone who has repressed that divine mother principle, they ask, when did you stop dancing? When did you stop singing? When did you give up loving stories? When did you stop finding peace in the place of sweet silence? How long can you sit in a quiet room all by yourself in complete silence and feel peace? Feel peace. The ultimate healing is healing the belief in separation, that we are somehow separate from our source. Eric Butterworth once said, he wrote a book called The Concentric Perspective, where we're trying to connect with the part of us that is God, is an expression of God out there creating. He said it's the mystical point where God extends itself as you, a point of changeless oneness. Isn't that beautiful? The mystical point where God is extending itself as you. That creativity of Father, Mother, God, expressing and manifesting. So how do we honor the mother principle today? Well, buy her flowers, buy her cake. But connect with your gifts and your talents to share in the world. What gives you joy? What makes you dance with glee? It doesn't have to be anything profound. What is the energy of your presence that you're adding to the group today? Are you lifting it up or are you bringing the energy down? What is the gift of your presence this morning? And what old wounds may be preventing you from that fullness of joy? Ask them to be revealed. Ask them to be revealed so that you might heal them. And yes, when you ask them to be revealed, oops, you got to go through it. But then you can heal them and release them and be free. Along with the article on the mother that's in the bulletin today, on the flip side is the grace prayer. We learned this in ministerial school by Reverend Debbie Tyson. I don't know if any of you are old enough that have been to the village. Kim, maybe you remember Debbie Tyson. She was a great instructor and she taught us the prayers. And she made up this prayer, she called it the grace prayer, and we were all saying it. She used more traditional biblical language in the first part. I tend to just heal the second part, but you can say the whole thing or half of it or whatever you want to do with it. You take it and make it yours. It begins, and you can hear the biblical language in the first part. I thirst. Into thy hands I commit my spirit, my soul, my body, this problem. Thy will is my will. And here's the part I love. Heal me at depth. Reveal that which needs to be revealed and heal that which needs to be healed so that my life can glorify God. And say that as often as you need to, day in, day out, until those old childhood wounds are not creating those crazy oblongs in your life, but beautiful, enormous circles of love, okay? Let us take that into prayer. Heal me at depth. reveal that which needs to be revealed and heal that which is to be healed, so that our lives may glorify God. And we just take a deep breath and open to that flow of the Divine Mother flowing in and through us with the nurturing love and light and compassion to heal every wound, to dissolve any darkness, to transform it all into light, so that we might freely dance the joy of life effortlessly, with grace and with ease. We create and we manifest on earth as it is in heaven. And we are grateful in the nature of Christ, and so it is, so it truly is. Amen.